All right, we are here today for final trial. Parties have been named 4 hours. I think Ms. Acosta might have something she wants to take up. Ms. Acosta?
Just a moment, Judge.
I'm going to invoke the rule.
Okay. Ms. Acosta, do we need to get the rule invoked and set up before we go into what you have?
No, Judge, and just for the court's knowledge, I didn't file anything, but I did have an issue that I did want to request.
Well, but in that sense, let me go ahead and let's get the rule set up. That way, if there's anything that testimonial that comes out throughout the course of this. So we've got principal parties. The only person that I see that can't stay in the room at this point in time is Ms. Potts. And then who is the department going to designate as their witness, Ms. Kyler Green?
The department will designate Kat Lewis as our I guess primary witness. So
right. All right. So then is there any chance somebody's going to call Ms. Crouch?
Judge, I reserve that Ms. Crouch just in case. So she'd be under the rule.
Okay. All right, then Ms. Potts and Ms. Crouch, the rule has been invoked. What that means is that any witnesses who are not material or necessary parties have to be excused from the courtroom. You are not to discuss this case with any other witness. You're not to watch the YouTube live stream. You're not to have this hearing going during your on any other device during testimony. And you're subject to this rule throughout the pendency of the proceedings until the court excuses you. You understand the rule at this time?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, I'm going to put you both. Yes.
Apologies. I think Mr. Sanchez as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're correct. Mr. Sanchez, you heard everything I said about the rule. All right. I'm going to put you all in the waiting room. If you have something else that you need to do and somebody can reach you, you're free to go about your day, but when we need you, we need you. So be available. Okay. All right. Miss Acosta, go ahead.
Judge, initially what I was going to do is request that we recess to get a nail bed test on the parents. And the reason I'm requesting that is there have been recent drug tests, and without getting into the results of them, I just have concerns based on it appears that mom has done something to her hair. And so I worry that any results aren't accurate. And I think that moving forward, in order to have a more productive final trial, it would be nice to have a nail bed test on both parents so that I know what I'm arguing for, if that makes sense. But again, I'm ready to go forward today if necessary, but I think that might be helpful.
I'll get responses starting with the department.
No objection.
You have no objection to a reset?
I have no objection to a recess. In terms of the dismissal date in this case, Your Honor, is March 18th. And I don't disagree that a nail bed test would be helpful. So logistically, I think we'd have to call the trial and recess it in order for that to be ordered.
And that's what I would be requesting, Judge.
Okay. Response, Ms. Savage.
Your Honor, this is just another fishing expedition by the department in the ad litem. At the last hearing, you ordered her hair test. Both the parents completed it. Neither of them were positive. This is just a delay tactic. Our parents are entitled to have this trial and they want to proceed today. So I would be in objection.
Ms. Shower, can you mute yourself, please?
Ms. Pearsall.
Judge, I honestly am not sure how I feel about this request. My client has been negative on every single drug test. Since, he's released from incarceration, he's done a million U8s and hair follicles, including clonavir recently. He'll be negative, no matter if you get his blood, urine, hair, skin, whatever. I mean, I agree it's just a fishing expedition, but I don't have any concerns. My client is not using. He's been the absolute amazingly compliant.
Mr. Saldivar?
Judge, I'm in agreement with Ms. Acosta. If I can remind the court that back in our last hearing, mom's sample was diluted in January, which we never had that prior. That was a concern. You can obviously see that mom has different colored hair at this time. That's a concern for us as well, that may have tampered with any hair follicle test that was done. She missed a requested UA from the department between the last hearing and this hearing. She stated she was out of town. She was given the opportunity to test where she was at. She did ignore the request of the department. And so those 2 tests were missed by Ms. Shower. So we do echo that concern. In addition, Judge, if the nail test were to come back clean and that would change the position, we could also work on possible benefits of Ms. Wells if that changes the agreement in any way. She's licensed, Judge. That gives us extra time to explore some other options to resolve this case if we can't come to an agreement.
Ms. Acosta, it's your motion. I'll give you the last bite of the apple.
Judge, I think it would just be helpful. I mirror Mr. Saldivar's sentiments regarding the missed drug tests. And it's just difficult to figure out whether or not the drug tests are valid, given the fact that mom did miss them and given the fact that it appears that she has altered her hair. Given the history of drug use, I think it's important that we get something that would be much more accurate. And it would give us time to allow the department to move forward with submitting paperwork for PCA benefits if that's something that would benefit Serenity.
I would just point out that not a single argument was made that there is any suspicion about dad using.
Judge, I would make the argument that they're in a relationship. They've made that clear to the court, and the department's policy has always treated parents as a unit when they're in a relationship together. So if one partner's potentially using, I would say that both parents are in the same ship.
Miss Lewis, when were the hair follicles administered?
They were done on 2/18 and 2/17.
And the results of those were negative?
Correct, yes.
Were you there for the hair follicles?
I was not.
Have the results been provided to all the parties?
Yes, Your Honor.
They were 100% negative. There was no evidence at all.
No evidence on the hair test, no, just negative.
And Judge, can I make a note just briefly? The change in Ms. Shower's hair was noticed prior to the hair follicle tests being sent for the hair follicle tests.
Well, my thought is this court has already heard evidence in the past about the drug use, diluted tests, missed tests. I'm not sure that delaying this proceeding anymore is going to change anything other than potentially give more evidence of a drug problem that this court is already aware of. I ordered hair follicles and they were done and the results were negative and this trial was set. So I'm going to deny that request and we're going to move forward this morning with trial. So if we can't finish today, then I think the party said 4 hours. I want to be done within 4 hours. And if we aren't done within 4 hours, we may have to come back on another day, but we're going to get started. So any other housekeeping issues we need to take up?
No.
Okay. Then
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
It's a little bit jumping the gun, but depending on the court's order, if at the end of this case, I just want to make sure the court's aware, if there is an order for PMC, that would hinder, not just hinder, that would invalidate the department's ability to get PCA benefits. So that's going to be an issue. If there is a final order for PMC, it will prevent the department from being able to get PCA benefits for the foster family, if that makes sense.
Is that due to the 6 months?
It is due to the 6 months has just hit. Yes, I think 3 days ago. And so, but the eligibility has not been signed off yet. And it will not be signed off if PMC is already granted to the foster home.
So is your request that if this court enters an order, that order be put in abeyance?
Correct.
And for how long?
I always underestimate, Your Honor. I was going to say a week, but probably longer.
Okay. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. All right, any other housekeeping issues? Okay. Ms. Kyler Green, call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The department calls Joe Sanchez.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Sanchez, good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good morning. Yes, my name is Joe Sanchez, and I'm one of the master investigators for Child Protective Investigations.
Are you familiar with this case?
Yes, I was the removing worker at the time of the intake.
Do you recall the date of the intake?
I do. It was around September 9th of 2021.
Okay. Do you recall what the intake was?
Yes, I do.
What was it?
It was in regards to Miss Sugar and baby Serenity being transferred to the hospital. The report indicated that both baby and mom tested positive for amphetamines. And so there was concern for the baby having withdrawals.
Okay. After you received this intake, what was your next step?
My next step was to investigate the allegations that were reported.
Okay. Did you go to the hospital?
I did.
Okay. You personally went to the hospital?
I did.
What hospital were they at?
Medina Regional Hospital in Hondo.
Okay. When you arrived to the hospital, what was who was the first person who you met with?
The first person that I did meet with was Miss Mindy Wells. She was an RN that was in charge of the floor at the time.
Okay. Were there concerns at the time when you spoke with Miss Wells? And again, no relation to the intervener in this case, correct?
Correct.
She's a nurse who worked at the hospital.
Yes.
Okay. So when you spoke with the RN, what were the concerns with the child at that time?
So the initial concern.
Hearsay.
Your Honor, requesting information on the allegations in this case, and how it encouraged Mr. Sanchez in his next steps in the investigation. This all goes to the intake and the reason why the department was involved in the first place.
Your Honor, it's not an intake, it's a follow-up. It's the actual investigation itself.
The intake came from the hospital, Your Honor.
All right.
Okay.
If you want to get into Ms. Pearsall, you could take him on board dire as to what he knows, whether or not he's a custodian, or Ms. Kyler Green, you can prove him up as a custodian. And then we'll determine whether or not it's hearsay.
Mr. Sanchez, in your role as an investigator in this case, do you have access to the case file?
I do.
Okay. And when you're investigating a case, what do you use the case file for?
To really prove up the allegations.
Do you review it to help assist in your in the steps you take in an investigation?
Of course.
Okay. And in this case, the allegations came up upon the birth of the child?
Correct.
Okay. In your investigation and meeting with the RN in this case, why was it pertinent that you speak with her about the allegations?
Because she had relevant information regarding the child that was in the hospital.
And what was that information relevant to?
The information was relevant to, leading up to the danger that the child was in.
Okay, so was it necessary? Why was it necessary for you to speak to this nurse about the concerns that she had with the child?
Because she had information and she was able to furnish information that this child was positive for amphetamines.
Okay.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. And motion to strike.
Response, Ms. Collier-Green.
Your Honor, what the witnesses just testified to is an allegation that came forward from the hospital that there was a child born positive for amphetamines. And he discussed that it is necessary for him, as the custodian of the records, to follow up on these intakes that come in and speak to the individuals who call them in order to determine safety of a child and what steps are necessary in his investigation.
Objections overruled. Motion to strike is denied.
Okay. Can you continue on your communications with the nurse and why that was necessary for your investigation?
Yeah, most certainly.
And I'm asking that my hearsay objection be allowed to run on to anything and everything this nurse says, because it is the very definition of hearsay.
Because
so I'm asking for a run.
Because they what, Ms. Pearsall? You're asking for hearsay objection, anything and everything and then what?
That the nurse has said, because that's the very definition of hearsay. So I'm asking for that to be allowed as a run-on objection, so I don't have to object to every question.
I'll allow the running objection.
Okay. Can you continue with you said that the first person who you met with was the nurse, and you spoke with her about her concerns on the child. Can you discuss that?
When I spoke to her, I asked if she could provide me with the drug test results for the baby and for Miss Schuer, and she was able to provide me with those results, in which I was able to see that the baby and Miss Schuer were positive for amphetamines.
Thank you. Did you lay eyes on Serenity at this time? Okay. Can you describe her for the court?
Yeah, throughout my interaction with Miss Schuer, as I was talking to her, the baby had some very high-pitched squeaking cry, and she was shaking uncontrollably.
Was she being held at this time, or was she in a bassinet?
She was in the bassinet.
Okay. What else can you describe about Serenity's physical state at this time? You said she was a high-pitched crying and shaking uncontrollably.
Mm-hmm. That's what correct. Else? That's really what I was able to observe at the time.
Okay. How long had you been an investigator at this point?
That was in 2021. So about going on 5 years.
And how many cases with children born with allegations of children born on methamphetamines had you done at that point?
Too many to count.
Okay. In your experience as an investigator, having done those types of cases, what did Serenity's physical state, in your opinion as an investigator, what was happening to her?
In my opinion, Serenity had very atypical reactions. What I mean by that is that, it's very rare that I see a baby shaking in compared to a regular baby that's not born to drugs. So there was I had a lot of concerns that this child was withdrawing. Okay. Essentially.
Based on your interactions with Serenity, did she appear to be showing signs of irritability?
Definitely.
Did you notice anything about her eyes?
They were like rolling back a little bit.
Okay. And you mentioned shaking. Any tremors or body tics or anything like that her body was showing?
And when I mean shaking,
objection leading.
Sustained.
Okay. I'll move on. Were you able to speak to Ms. Schauer after you had seen or spent some time with Serenity?
Yes. So we were in the same room.
Okay. Were you able to speak to her about the concerns with methamphetamine use?
I was.
Okay. And did she make any admissions as to her own use while she was pregnant with Serenity?
She did.
Okay. And what did she say about her methamphetamine use?
Jessica was very honest. At the time of my contact with her, she mentioned that she had been using throughout the first and second trimester of her pregnancy. I met her on a Friday, and she had admitted to using that Tuesday of that same week.
And was that Friday the date of Serenity's birth?
So I met Miss Schuer on the 10th. So I want to say it was a day prior that the baby was born.
Okay. Do you have any recollection as to whether or not Serenity was was born full term?
The intake indicated that the baby was full term.
Okay. And do you have any indications to whether or not Ms. Schauer received prenatal care during her pregnancy?
So from my understanding that she only received maybe 1 to 2 prenatal care visits.
Just to be clear, you stated that mom admitted to methamphetamine use during the first trimester of her pregnancy and the second trimester?
Correct.
As well as methamphetamine use would appear to be 2 days before the birth of Serenity.
Correct.
Okay. What about the father in this case, Emilio Del Toro? Was he present at the birth?
No, he wasn't.
Where was he?
Medina County Jail.
Do you know if there was any concerns about drug use on his part?
At the time, I had concerns for him not actively using because he had been in custody already, but there had been some...
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
He's testifying to his personal knowledge, Your Honor, as to the concerns that he had at the time in his investigation.
I'll allow it.
Speculations.
Well, I haven't heard it get that far yet. I'll allow it.
At the time of birth, he had already been in custody for some time. However, during my conversation with him, he admitted to using methamphetamines prior to coming back into custody.
So during your investigation, you met with him in jail?
I did.
Okay. Was he aware of Ms. Schauer's drug use at the time of her pregnancy?
He said that he was not aware until he was informed by his mom.
Did he ever share with you knowledge of Ms. Schauer using methamphetamines at all?
He didn't.
So he had no idea that she ever used meth?
He claimed he didn't.
Was a removal sought by the department?
Yes.
And why, in your opinion, was that removal sought?
Because of the continuous drug use by Ms. Schuer or Jessica, and her inability to remain sober. She was really unstable at the time. She didn't have a consistent living environment for the child. And father was in custody.
Did you review her history in this case as well?
I briefly reviewed the history, yes.
Okay, and was that a concern as well for you as an investigator in whether or not you sought a removal?
It was.
Why?
Because she had just gotten out of a family-based safety service case where she was given many opportunities to lead a road of sobriety, and she wasn't able to complete that.
And was that case closed with or without her maintaining custody of the 2 children involved in that case?
Correct. Her other children had remained with her mom.
Okay. And were there still concerns at the time of the close of the family-based case as to her continued methamphetamine use?
Yes.
And do you have any recollection as to any sort of cycles of sobriety, relapsing, followed up with addiction, any cycles of that you were able to see in your investigation?
Definitely.
Okay.
I mean, that was through my conversation with Jessica herself.
Okay. And was that a concern that led to the removal as well? Was the continued cycles of relapsing?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Ms. Savage.
Yes, Mr. Sanchez, was Ms. Schauer cooperative in your investigation?
She was leading up to the post removal.
Did she express a desire to engage in services?
She did.
Did she, to your knowledge, then engage in those services?
I don't know. She became resistant post removal, with me at least.
Did you offer her a safety plan?
She was offered a parental child safety placement that in lines with the safety plan.
And was she willing to engage in that?
She was, but she was told from the very beginning when I met with her that we were going to be staffing her case for removal.
So the department didn't try to make reasonable efforts to prevent the removal?
We did. We entered a parental child safety placement. Upon staffing, we had enough grounds for removal.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall.
Thank you, Honor. You interviewed the father, correct?
I did.
And he specifically told you that he had no idea that there was any drug use going on with the mother, correct?
Can you repeat that?
He specifically told you he had no idea that the mother was using methamphetamine while pregnant with Serenity, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Additionally, at the time of your interview, he wasn't using, he was clean, correct?
Well, he had been in custody for some time.
So the answer to my question is yes, he was clean.
Of course.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Of course.
Okay. And part of what you do is do background checks, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And did you do a CPS background check on Mr. Del Toro?
I did a CPS check, correct.
Okay. And did it show that Mr. Del Toro had no CPS history of any kind?
It showed that he had no CPS history, correct.
Okay. No other questions?
Mr. Saldivar.
Yes, Judge. Thank you. As far as Mr. Del Toro, in your report, it states that he admitted to you that he had been using methamphetamines prior to his incarceration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did he state to you how long he'd been using methamphetamines?
For roughly about, he had been messing with it for about a year.
And prior to his incarceration, did he explain what kind of relationship he had with Ms. Shower?
He indicated that he had a relationship with her.
So during that relationship, he admitted to using methamphetamines?
Correct.
Okay. But yet he indicated he had no idea that Ms. Shower was on methamphetamines. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were asked that if he was clean at the time you talked to him, and you said yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that a voluntary clean, or was he clean because he was incarcerated?
He was clean because he was incarcerated.
And at the time when he was incarcerated, what were the charges that he was incarcerated for?
Actually, he was
Objection,
on
Your Honor. Charges are not admissible, convictions are, so that charges are relevant.
Response.
Well, Judge, it goes to the investigation. I believe the department has a responsibility to see if they can return the child to the parent. I can ask more questions as to that, but I think that's relevant knowledge, and it goes to best interest as to why they weren't able to return the child to the father.
Okay, well, that's asked and answered because there's already been testimony he's incarcerated. The charge is irrelevant to that.
I'll overrule the relevance objection.
Your Honor, but the charge is inadmissible. It's not a conviction.
Well, he's asking, from what I interpret, he's asking about the charges to show behavior and concerns that the department would have. So it's not admissible as far as his guilt on that conviction, but it is admissible in this proceeding as far as the father's behaviors and the department's concerns. So it's overruled. You may continue, Mr. Saldivar.
Mr. Sanchez, can you answer that question, please?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, at the time he was incarcerated, what were the charges he was incarcerated for?
So actually he was incarcerated for a violation of his probation for the original charges of evading arrest and possession of controlled substance.
Okay, so it was a violation of probation, so he had already been convicted for it. Is that correct?
I can't testify to whether he had been convicted.
Okay. Now, his incarceration and those charges, did that prevent the return of the child to Mr. Del Toro?
Yes.
At the time, did Mr. Del Toro have appropriate housing?
No.
Okay. Now, he testified that he learned from his mother that Miss Shower was using methamphetamines. Did he elaborate on that conversation with you?
No, other than that his mom just told him that she had been using.
Okay. And you yourself were able to witness the, Serenity at the hospital, is that correct?
Yes.
Is it your testimony that she was experiencing observable withdrawal symptoms?
Very much so.
And can you briefly explain the symptoms that you witnessed?
The symptoms that I witnessed was that she was shaking uncontrollably.
Objection, Your Honor, it's been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. In your opinion, do you believe that Ms. Shower's use of methamphetamine caused harm to Serenity?
Yes.
Now, as part of your record, you pulled Jessica Shower's CPS history, is that correct?
Correct.
And why did you pull the CPS history?
To show a pattern of behavior, and to determine, if she had been using in her prior cases, to give me a better idea of what I need to do in my investigation.
Okay, and what were the major concerns of her past CPS history?
That she was given many opportunities to live a sober life. She had gone into inpatient, and yet she was still relapsing on methamphetamines.
At the time, do you believe that Ms. Shower exhibited a behavior of a pattern of abuse of methamphetamines that caused risk to her children?
Yes.
And at the time, did she have any care or custody or control of any of her other children?
She didn't.
Do you know why that she didn't have that care or control of the other children?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Pass the witness, Judge.
Any follow-up, Ms. Carla Green?
Yes, Your Honor, just one. Mr. Sanchez, are you aware of any
Judge,
other children? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I have a few questions, if I may, Judge.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Acosta.
That's all right.
That's my fault.
Thank you. Mr. Sanchez, you mentioned that Ms. Shower was resistant to cooperate with you post-removal, correct?
Correct.
Okay, how was she resistant to cooperate?
She was trying to disturb placement at the time, post-removal, and she was not communicating with me after the removal.
Okay, and how was she trying to disrupt placement?
She was...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. It would have come from placement. He just testified she wasn't talking to him.
Your Honor, but I believe if this is part of what's in his file and what he's observed, and then I think that he would be able to testify to it.
Why don't we get there without talking about what she said and more of what he knows from being a custodian?
Okay.
Let's rephrase it.
All right. Mr. Sanchez, is there anything in the file that you have reviewed that explains how the placement was being disrupted?
She was making, from my understanding, she was making threats, she was making threats to placement to pick up the child, see the child without permission.
Okay. And so in your experience, would you say that in order to keep the child safe, the removal was necessary?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Del Toro, did you drug test him while he was incarcerated?
I did not.
Okay. So your knowledge of whether or not he had been using is based off of something he told you?
Correct.
Okay, but previous to his incarceration, he did admit that he had been using.
Correct.
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained. He'd already answered the question, but I'll sustain the objection.
Did you, in the file, did you review Mr. Del Toro's criminal history?
I did.
And was there anything in that criminal history that was concerning to the department?
Yes.
Your Honor, and I'm going to object to anything that's not a conviction.
I'll allow her the same latitude I gave Mr. Saldivar. I'll overrule as to that, but let's try to stay away from anything suggesting that he's guilty or innocent of any of these charges.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Sanchez, was there anything that was concerning?
About his criminal history?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Judge, I'll pass the witness.
Thank you. You testified before that Mr. Del Toro did not have any history with Child Protective Services that you had seen. How many children does he have?
None at the time.
Okay, so Serenity is his only child that we know of, and
at the time of the removal, correct.
Okay, so thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Any other cross for Mr. Sanchez?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Saldivar.
At the time of your investigation, you found that Mr. Del Toro had been convicted of possession of a controlled substance, a felony, in 2018. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then also at the time of your investigation, Mr. Del Toro had been convicted of assault causing bodily injury to a family member, a misdemeanor, in March of 2020. Is that correct?
Correct.
And were those convictions concerning to the department?
Yes.
And why were they concerning?
Most importantly, the possession of controlled substance charge, because it was in tandem with the reason why we were involved in the investigation. But most importantly, he admitted to me that he had a gram of methamphetamines at the time he got arrested for it.
Pass the witness. Thank you.
Any other cross for Mr. Sanchez?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Pearsall.
Ms. Del Toro's conviction for possession was 3 years prior to the child's birth, correct?
Correct.
Now the questions.
All right, anything else for Mr. Sanchez?
No, Your Honor.
May he be excused?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Sanchez, thank you for your time and your testimony today. You're excused. You may stay in the trial or you may go about your business.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, thank you too.
Thank you, Your Honor. The department calls Katarina Lewis.
All right, Ms. Lewis has been sworn. You may proceed.
I am a permanency specialist, a caseworker. After the removal happens, I come in to help hopefully either reunify or find a permanency goal for the child.
Okay. And when did you get assigned to this case?
In the middle of October of 2022.
So at that point, how long had the case been going on?
For about a year at that time.
When you get assigned to a case after it's been going on for quite some time, what sort of steps do you take to acclimate yourself to the facts of the case and the current status?
Just reviewing the files and understanding the family plan and the services and the visitation and all that.
Okay. And when you say reviewing the file, do you mean the record that the department has created, all the caseworkers who've been on the case, the removal, all those sorts of things?
Yes.
Okay. And were you able to familiarize yourself with the entire case file?
As good as I could, yes.
Okay. And at the time that you become assigned to this case, then are you then considered the custodian of the record?
Yes.
I'd like to give the court a little bit of a timeline on this case. Are you familiar as to, when temporary managing conservatorship was granted to the department?
Yes, I am. It was granted on September 16th of 2021.
When it comes to Ms. Shower, what were the first steps that were taken to begin getting her the services that she needed for the benefit of Serenity?
She was involved in creating a family plan of service, which was tailored to the reasons for removal. Her first step was to address the substance abuse. And so we were able to get her in services that did that.
Okay. Do you recall any of the services that she was able to do at the beginning of this case in the fall of 2021?
She did a 12-step program with South Texas Life Skills. She also did a parenting class. And then she also did an OSAR assessment, which at the beginning, her first one didn't have any recommendations. They just wanted her to continue that 12-step program. And drug testing.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Sorry.
Did you say the last thing that you said again?
Random drug testing.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Greenwald, did you get that?
Can she say, and whether to continue the 12-step program?
With South Texas Life Skills.
Okay. The 12-step program, what is that for?
To work on towards sobriety.
Do you, sobriety from what?
Methamphetamines, any type of drug.
Okay. Did she also take any domestic violence classes in the October, November timeframe?
Yes, she did. She completed that on 12/15 of 2021. Okay.
And what about a psychiatric eval?
Yes, she also did that on November 16th of 2021.
And were these all services that were recommended and ordered by the court as per the family plan of service?
Yes.
Okay. You said that she began the 12-step program and then did the OSAR. Why was it in that order?
I think it had to do with OSAR's scheduling. Sometimes they get really packed, and so it can be months out. So sometimes we ask parents to start a program if they're able to before the drug assessment.
Okay. And so this 12-step program, this is outpatient?
Yes, this is outpatient.
Okay. Did she complete the 12-step program?
Yes.
When?
December 6th of 2021.
Okay. And you said that she continued to do random drug testing?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any concerns with the random drug testing following her completion of the 12-step program?
In February 16th of 2022, she had a positive.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object to hearsay on the actual drug test results. And non-responsive because the question was concerns.
Sustained.
Okay, I'll just re-ask the question. And Ms. Lewis, if you can just answer the question that I asked. Did you have any concerns in the early spring as to her random drug testing?
Yes.
Okay. Were there any changes to her services, her being Ms. Shower's services, as a result of these concerns from random drug testing?
Yes.
Okay, and what were the changes?
She was asked to complete another OSAR assessment and follow recommendations from that.
Okay. Do you recall when that second OSAR was done?
Yes, in April 26th of 2022.
Okay. What was the recommendation from that OSAR?
She was recommended to go to inpatient at Journeys in San Angelo.
What sort of treatment was this inpatient facility for?
It was, I believe, a 60-day program that she was sent up to San Angelo to work on her sobriety and have that support up there.
Did she go willingly?
She did. Okay.
At this point, it's about 7 months into the case. As a caseworker involved in these cases for as long as you have, what does it show to you, or do you have any thoughts on the fact that 7 months into a case, a parent is starting inpatient?
It's concerning that there were relapses.
What about the fact that an outpatient had already been accomplished? Is that concerning as well, that there's inpatient followed by outpatient?
Yes.
Why?
It shows that the behavior changes weren't met and that they weren't able to meet their goals in that outpatient program.
Okay. What are your thoughts as to what it means for the permanency of the child?
At this time, currently?
Yep. When you're 7 months into a case and a parent is starting inpatient after a completion of outpatient.
It's concerning. Usually we would staff to talk about a goal change at that point. And also kind of gauge how she does an inpatient.
Was Ms. Shower able to complete the inpatient treatment that she began in July of 2022?
Yes, she was.
And do you recall when that was?
It was July 5th of 2022.
Okay. And then from July to, I guess the rest of the summer of 2022, what was happening with the case? Where was Ms. Shower? Can you just give a general status as to what was happening with this case?
Ms. Shower, after she completed inpatient, she did get into an outpatient program in a sober living home called Sarah's House in San Angelo. She was actively engaged in that sober living home. She was working at Family Dollar in San Angelo. And I do know she was engaged in some counseling, also individual counseling, continuing that.
What about visitation with Serenity?
She was coming down once a month for 4 hours, just to kind of take the driving off of her. At that time, she didn't have transportation. So a courtesy caseworker was helping us with that.
Who can you describe which direction these visitations were happening? Was Ms. Shower coming down for the visits, or was Serenity going up to see her?
Ms. Shower is coming down to the visits.
Okay. And where did those visits take place?
In Boerne, Texas. They began in Boerne, Texas. I know at one time they were also in the Hondo office.
Okay. And can you describe the visits for the court?
I know that Ms. Shower always brought a diaper bag, and it was reported that she did really well in the visits. No concerns.
Okay. In September of 2022, were you aware of any concerns in Ms. Shower's sobriety?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Did you talk to her about her maintenance of sobriety at this point?
I was not the caseworker at that time, but I do believe that a caseworker previous talked to her about it.
Okay. And was there any admissions made on her part to the department the department at that time on concerns or problems with her sobriety?
Yes.
Okay. And what were those admissions?
That she had a relapse on alcohol in September.
Was this self-admitted, or was your understanding, was this self-admitted, or was there a test that was done that showed positive for alcohol?
To my understanding, it was self-admitted.
Okay.
Hang on just a second. Ms. Shower, I need you to keep your video on, please. Thank you, ma'am. All right, go ahead, Ms. Carla Green.
Thank you, Your Honor. So a subsequent relapse in this case, and at this point, we're about a year into the case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. To your understanding, and this is backtracking a little bit, so I apologize, but to your understanding, was there an extension in this case granted in the summer?
Yes.
And what is your understanding as to what that extension was for?
That Ms. Shower had just completed inpatient, and we wanted to give her a little extra time to get permanency.
Okay. And so this is during the extension of this case when this second relapse has occurred?
Yes.
Okay. What were the next steps in assisting Ms. Shower in maintaining again her in helping maintain again her sobriety?
After that, she had to move out of the Sarah sober living home and wait 30 days and stay clean. And after that, she was able to come back, and then she completed her outpatient program on October 4th of 2022.
And where was that outpatient completed?
It was completed at the Sarah's home, the sober living, I believe.
Okay, so she was able to go back there, complete.
Yes, Journey's outpatient program too. Yes.
Okay. So how many outpatient services at a year into the case at this point has Ms. Shower been engaged in?
2.
And how many inpatients?
1.
Okay. When did Emilio Del Toro get released from jail?
October 7th of 2022.
So this is right about the time that Ms. Shower completed her second outpatient?
Correct.
Okay. Was she, what was the expectation of her services at this point post outpatient in October of 2022?
To continue the random drug testing, continue, sobriety, following up with her sponsor, and then also just her individual counseling that she was engaged in, continuing that.
And where was she living at this point post?
San Angelo still.
I'm gonna switch gears a little bit now to Emilio. You said that he was released in October. What is your understanding as to his sobriety while he was incarcerated?
To my understanding, he was able to complete a substance abuse treatment program while he was incarcerated, and also group therapy, individual therapy, and anger management.
The drug treatment, was that through the jail or was that through the department?
That was through the jail.
Okay. And do you have any understanding as to whether or not that was a condition of his incarceration, or what the purpose of that was?
To my understanding, it was a condition of his incarceration. That's why that was completed.
Okay. And you stated that he completed anger management classes?
Yes.
Do you know the date and year that he did those?
Well, he did them while he was in jail. And then he also, when he was out of jail, he completed them on December 6th of 2022.
Anger management?
Yes.
Okay. When you got involved in this case, do you have conversations with, or did you have conversations with Ms. Shower about the status of her relationship with Mr. Del Toro?
I did further on, yes.
What do you mean further on?
Like a month or so after I got the case, because Ms. Nix was still working kind of side by side with me.
When did Ms. Shower move from San Angelo back to Dilley, Texas?
Around December 17th of 2022.
Now, in your role as a caseworker at this stage in this case, or in all cases, do you have any concerns about, did you have any concerns about Ms. Shower moving back?
We did, just as she was doing really well in San Angelo. She had a good support up there, and she had talked about wanting to stay in San Angelo, as she said that coming back here was a trigger to her.
Do you know what specifically was a trigger?
She has stated Divine as a trigger for her.
Did she ever discuss that Emilio was a trigger for her?
She did not specifically say Emilio, but there were concerns of her codependency through counseling.
Okay. Codependency with him?
Yes.
Did you have any concerns about her moving back at this time period because it was so close to her completion of outpatient?
Yes.
Were there more services and engagement in classes that she could have or should have completed in San Angelo prior to her moving back to?
She had completed everything. It was just really her individual counseling that she was finishing, which would have been nice to finish it in San Angelo because she already had a rapport with that counselor instead of restarting all over.
When she moved back, what sort of changes were made to her service plan or to visitation?
When she moved back, we got her in individual counseling, and then she just was continuing her random drug testing, and then her visitation we were still doing the 4 hours unsupervised at that time.
What is your understanding as to the status of the relationship between her and Emilio when she moved back?
That they were together.
Okay. Can you explain if you had any concerns about there being a couple at that point in this case and why?
The department had concerns of them being a couple, just due to the sobriety on both of them. They it had been known that they used together back years ago, and that Ms. Shower had just completed a inpatient outpatient program and had been working on her sobriety and moved back to possible triggers around this area.
How does the department treat a couple when it comes to their status in a case or their engagement in services and the permanency of a child?
We like them to do their services side by side, because if they're a couple, that's how we treat them.
So if one is having a problem with sobriety, they both are?
Correct.
Okay. At this time period, we're kind of in January 2023?
Yes.
Okay. What other services had Emilio completed?
Emilio completed he started in his individual counseling. He completed a psychological evaluation on January 5th of 2023. He also completed parenting classes on December 6th of 2023. And he's also completed domestic violence classes on February 23rd of 2023.
So what services are still pending?
He's still engaged in his individual counseling. He's completed everything else.
Okay. What about couples counseling?
Couples counseling has been a struggle. I sent in the referral at the beginning of January. Kind of took a little while for the counselor to get a hold of Jessica and Emilio. And then after that, there was a scheduling issue for the January one. So we weren't able to do January. So then they were supposed to fill out some paperwork, and Jessica mailed it in. However, the counselor didn't get it in time, so she canceled their appointment for February 17th. Then that following Tuesday, they did, the counselor let me know that she got Jessica's paperwork and that she was filled up for this week, but she could see them tonight at 5 o'clock.
So their first round of couples counseling begins literally tonight.
Tonight, yes. They did see a lady at South Texas Life Skills one time together in February, I believe 7th. And they were able to have a couples counseling session with her.
Is it concerning to you that there's still lateness and dragging of feet, or however you want to describe it, this late in the game when it comes to services?
Yes.
Why?
Just concerning because we would like those services. I mean, couples counseling was important so they could address being co-parenting. However, we weren't able to really address that.
Have they ever co-parented?
No.
Have they ever lived together with Serenity in the home?
No.
Are they living together now?
No.
Let's talk about the random drug testing. Was Ms. Schauer completing random drug testing for you during your time on this case?
Yes.
Okay. Any concerns with this random drug testing post outpatient of 2022?
No.
Any none. Diluted samples? Any
did have objection, Your Honor, leaving.
Right.
Has Ms. Schauer always tested when you asked her to?
Yes.
Was there ever a delay in testing recently?
Just one time, yes, in February.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. What was the issue with this request for testing in February?
I had asked her and Emilio to go drug test, texting Jessica, on the 15th of February. And I didn't hear back until the next day. Jessica stated she was out of town visiting her other daughter in the Waco area.
At that point in the case, when we're in February of 2023 and we're at the tail end of the statutory time limits on a case, is it concerning for you for a parent to not respond?
Yes, especially because she usually responds to me. So
okay, so the two of you had this sort of relationship when you texted her to go test. Was she usually pretty responsive?
Yeah, she usually got on it.
Okay, so what sort of concerns did that cause for you, or hesitations did that cause for you, if any?
Just was concerning that she hadn't texted me back. So, but then she did state she was out of town. I wasn't able to confirm that, but she did say she was out of town.
Okay. What about Emilio? Did you ask him to test at the same time?
Well, I texted Jessica, so I'm not sure she got that to him. However, he texted me the next day asking if he could drug test on Wednesday of next week because his job wasn't allowing him to have any more time off, and he was concerned he was going to get laid off. Okay,
let's talk about Serenity's medical issues. Does she have a lot of medical appointments?
Someday, it depends on the month.
Okay. Have the parents been allowed to be present for those medical appointments?
To my knowledge, well, they have started being present starting in February. Yes.
Have they missed any appointments?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe for the court some of these appointments that they've missed in the last couple months?
They just missed a speech appointment on the 6th of February. And there were also appointments yesterday. However, Jessica did text me saying she had the stomach bug. And that's why she wasn't able to go. And she also had her own appointment yesterday too.
Okay. Was there an optometrist appointment that was missed?
Yeah. Yes, that was yesterday. That was that appointment. However,
Okay.
Jessica stated she was sick.
Okay. Was there a speech appointment for Serenity that was missed?
Yes, on the 6th.
Okay. Was there a dental appointment that was either
Attention, Your Honor, leading.
Sustained.
Any other appointments that you can think of that were either missed or the parents showed up late to, or just were not fully present for?
I do know that they did show up to the dentist appointment. However, they were late, so they had to wait in the waiting room. But both parents attempted to go to that appointment, and they were able to see Serenity after she got out.
Okay. Did Serenity have any surgeries recently that were emergent?
She did. Last Tuesday, she had an emergency surgery.
Okay. Were the parents present for that?
Emilio was not. I know he had to work. And Jessica, yes, she was able to show up.
Okay. And to your knowledge, was there any follow-up care or concern provided by Ms. Shower as to Serenity's well-being after the surgery?
I do know. I believe she had an appointment today for her surgery.
No, not appointments, but any phone calls or requests for information by Ms. Shower.
I'm gonna calls for speculation and
after her
hearsay.
knowledge, if the mother reached out to the caregiver to check into Serenity's well-being, it's just she either knows it or she doesn't.
Overruled.
To my knowledge, I am unsure if she checked in on her.
Do you think that Serenity can be returned to Ms. Shower today?
No.
Do you think that Serenity can be, well, I guess I'm not returned, can be given to Mr. Del Toro today?
No.
Why? What are your concerns?
Well, I have not had time to go look at where Emilio is living, which is on me. However, that would be a concern because I just haven't had time to go see where he is living. And there was also some downplay of drug use back in January.
From Emilio?
Yes.
Was there a request to the court for a transitional monitored return by the mom?
Yes.
And what is your understanding as to the results of that request or that motion?
It was denied.
And was there a request for the visitation to go back to being supervised because the parents were now exercising their visitation together?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm pretty sure the court is aware of what the court ordered.
Well, I mean,
it's just, I mean,
Still
all
think
of this
it's
is what the
relevant,
court
so-
ordered, but
Judge, I would argue that it's for the record as well.
overruled. You may proceed.
are you aware of the a motion for the visitations to backtrack to being supervised versus unsupervised?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the result of that motion?
We put Jessica and Emilio's visits together. Supervised by, yes, me or a mobile case aide.
Okay, and what is your understanding as to the reason for that?
Because they are a couple, and if one is going to have supervised visitation and the other should have supervised visitation, it needs to be an equal ground.
Is Serenity bonded to her caregivers right now?
Yes.
What have you been able to observe about her bond with them?
She feels comfortable around them. She reaches for them. She runs around. I can just tell she's very bonded to them.
Who does she call mom?
At this time, Haley.
What is your opinion as to her relationship with Mr. Del Toro?
She has just since Mr. Del Toro got out of incarceration, has just started having a relationship with her.
So the lack of relationship, what would you say that's due to?
Mr. Del Toro being incarcerated.
What do you think is in Serenity's best interest? Where do you think it is in Serenity's best interest for her to live?
With Miss Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Miss Shower has completed all her services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The only thing that the department was asking was the couples counseling, correct?
Correct.
And again, that was not ordered until January of 23.
Yes.
So a year and almost a half into this case, correct?
Correct.
The department had knowledge, though, that these parents were in relationships since the beginning of the case. Is that correct?
Correct.
Why then was the couples counseling not made a part of the family plan of service a year ago?
To my knowledge, I'm not sure. I do believe that at one point, Miss Shower did say that she was not with Emilio farther down after the removal happened.
Okay. But to your knowledge, at least as recently as October, they were in a relationship?
I found out that they were back together end of November, beginning of December.
Okay. Why was the couples counseling request not made then?
We had just not discussed it at that time. Yes.
Okay. So the department adds that service 60 days before trial and then is using it to try to terminate the parents' rights.
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
That request was added to their family plan of service 60 days before trial?
Yes.
Actually, less than, correct? Because it's February 28th?
Yes.
Okay. In regards to Ms. Shower's unsupervised visitation, when that began in October of 2022, all those visits went well?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. There was no concern about Ms. Shower's interaction with Serenity, correct?
No.
Okay. And then when she had supervised visits with Serenity, those would go well as to your knowledge, correct?
Yes.
You testified about the motion to extend or retain that was granted in this case. Do you recall that?
The July?
Yes.
Yes.
And you've testified that you are the custodian of record in this case?
Yes.
You've reviewed the prior court orders?
Yes.
Okay. If I showed you that order to retain, you would recognize it?
Most likely, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I screen share?
Yes, it should be enabled.
Ms. Lewis, can you identify this order for us?
Yes.
Okay. But it's the order retaining?
Order retaining suit on the court dockets and setting hearing dates.
Okay. Can you read provision 3 for us?
Pursuant to 263-401B-3, Texas Family Code, and the court finds that a parent of the child has made a good faith effort to successfully complete the service plan, but needs additional time. And on the completion of the service plan, the court intends to order the child to return to the parent.
Okay. And then this was signed by our court?
Yes.
Okay. So the intent Your Honor, may I admit respondents 1?
Yeah, it's not a certified copy, so I object to it.
Well, the court will take judicial notice of its own order in that regard and find that it is a valid copy of the order. Court will overrule the objection and admit respondent's mother's 1 as the order extending this case.
So Ms. Lewis, as of July 22nd, the department's intent was to allow Ms. Shower more time to do services and ultimately return Serenity to her care. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that Ms. Shower maintaining her parental rights to Serenity is in Serenity's best interest?
Yes.
Do you believe that Ms. Shower has the ability to meet Serenity's needs?
At this time, yes.
Okay. And do you recognize that Ms. Shower has access to resources and programs that can help her meet those needs for Serenity?
Yes.
Have you talked to Ms. Shower about what her plans would be as far as childcare if Serenity were to be placed in her home?
She does have support from her mother. So she has talked about that being a support. Of course, also Emilio. And then exploring daycare as an option, as Serenity's already been in daycare and does well.
Have you had the chance to go to Ms. Shower's home?
I have.
And is it an appropriate house at this time?
Yes.
And is Ms. Shower working at this time?
Yes.
Okay. And then in regards to Ms. Shower's other children, she does have other children not involved in this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
To your knowledge, how many other children does she have?
3 others.
Okay. Does she get to visit with those children?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Has she reported to you that some of those children even stay the night with her over the weekends?
Yeah, she has told me that.
Okay. And there haven't been any new intakes or allegations of abuse or neglect of Ms. Shower to those children in her care. Is that correct?
Objection,
Yes.
speculation, Judge.
Sustained.
To your knowledge, Ms. Lewis, have there been any new intakes on Ms. Shower since this case began?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And then in regards to Ms. Shower's progress in her services as far as drug treatment, you're satisfied with what she's done to rectify the drug issue?
Yes.
Okay. She successfully completed inpatient treatment.
Yes.
She successfully completed her second outpatient treatment.
Yes.
And how long have you been working as a legal worker for either Belong or the department?
For 2.5 years.
During that time, is it kind of normal for parents at first to struggle with getting drug treatment?
Yes.
Okay. But ultimately, Ms. Shower did commit to that treatment and she is sober. Is that correct?
Yes.
How many hair tests have you sent Ms. Shower for?
I have sent her for 2.
And have both of those hair tests been negative?
Objection, hearsay.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
Well, where's she getting her information from?
Those would have been the results from those drug tests.
All right. You want to ask her about whether or not that information's in the file?
Ms. Lewis, are those drug test results made part of your file as the custodian of records?
Yes.
Okay. And have either of those hair tests, both of those hair tests have been negative, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All the UAs you've sent Ms. Shower to have been negative?
Yes. We did have a diluted, but it was negative.
And in regards to that diluted, you had made contact with the testing facility, and because of that conversation, you weren't concerned about that drug test, were you?
Not at this time. No.
And going back to the hair test, the most recent hair test was just done 10 to 14 days ago?
Yes.
And again, based on those drug tests, you don't have concerns that she's relapsed at this time?
No.
In regards to Jessica and Emilio's relationship, there have not been any instances of domestic violence between them. Is that correct?
Objection, hearsay. I'm sorry. Speculation.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
Yeah, sustained. Rephrase, please.
Ms. Lewis, based on your knowledge, have there been any incidents of domestic violence between Mr. Del Toro and Ms. Shower?
No.
Okay. And again, as a custodian of record, you've reviewed all the family plan of service evaluations?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you this document. And if you can read the title of it for the record.
Family plan evaluation.
And for who are the participants listed?
Emilio and Jessica Shower.
Okay. And this was completed on October 13th?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. February 3rd of 2022. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. If we were to scroll down here, this is for Serenity, so we're going to scroll down to Miss Showers.
There are no intimate partner violence concerns.
And then for Mr. Del Toro, can you read number 4 for me?
There are no intimate partner violence concerns.
And can you read number 5 as well?
Mr. Del Toro does not have conflicts in the home or with family relationship that will have an impact on Serenity.
Your Honor, I'd like to respondents to the family plan
Judge, I object. It's not a certified copy of the family plan.
Judge, I would have the same objection.
Your Honor, I have no objection, and I would ask that the court take judicial notice of this document, which is filed with the court.
Ms. Savage, any response to the objections?
Your Honor, I would ask that the court take judicial notice of this. It was created by the department. All the parties were involved, and it was filed into the case, and all the parties have received a copy of it.
Or we'll take judicial notice of the family plan of service.
In addition to the department stating that there's no concerns for domestic violence for either of these parents, again, there haven't been any, to your knowledge, any calls for police regarding these parents and domestic violence between each other, correct?
Correct.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Pearsall?
Can you tell us what Mr. Del Toro was required to do by his service plan?
Yes, he was asked to engage in individual counseling, a drug treatment program, which he had completed in jail, a psychological evaluation, random drug testing, and parenting classes.
Anything else, or was that it?
That was it. And follow all recommendations.
Okay. So let's talk about individual counseling. Did he engage in individual counseling while he was incarcerated?
Yes.
And was he successfully engaged and in fact successfully completed individual counseling while he was incarcerated?
Yes.
When he was released from incarceration, did you refer him to another individual counselor that contracted with the department?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And even though he already successfully finished individual counseling, did he engage with that counselor?
Yes.
And who was that counselor?
Lucia Cobbs.
And when did Mr. Del Toro start seeing Ms. Cobbs?
The beginning of January.
Of which year?
Of 2023. Sorry.
And how often was he seeing her?
Weekly.
And did Ms. Cobbs provide you with therapy notes?
Yes.
And are they part of your file?
Yes.
Did you also discuss with her Mr. Del Toro's progress?
Yes.
And so what is his progress, if any, in individual therapy?
She is impressed with his progress. He is engaged. She said that they are addressing boundaries and how to walk away when you may get angry. And she stated she's impressed with his engagement and his progress.
Does Ms. Cobbs believe that he has been very successful in his rehabilitation?
Objection, speculation, and hearsay, Judge.
Sustained.
So has he now successfully finished individual counseling twice throughout this case?
She has not successfully discharged him, but he has been engaged in doing both.
Okay. And she believes he's been successful, correct? Based
Objection,
on
speculation, hearsay.
She is the custodian of records. I'm asking if she knows.
Judge, she's asking for the therapist's opinion.
I'll sustain the objection if you're asking for what the therapist has stated or opined.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
Okay.
Based on therapeutic notes in your file, is Mr. Del Toro successfully engaging in 2 different therapies?
Yes.
Now, you already testified that he successfully finished drug treatment, correct?
Correct.
Did he provide you with a certificate showing that he successfully finished?
Yes.
You want to share a screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the copy of the certificate of achievement that Mr. Del Toro provided to you?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, I would ask that our Father's Exhibit 1 be admitted into evidence.
Judge, I object. It's not a certified copy of the certificate.
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, it's not a court document. It doesn't have to be certified. It's part of the file of the department.
Judge, just because it's the part of the file doesn't mean that it's accurate. It's from the detention center, Judge. I have no idea who signed it. It doesn't have the director's name on there. It just has a signature.
I'll overrule the objection. It looks official.
So Father's 1 is admitted?
Father's 1 is admitted.
After finishing drug treatment, was Mr. Del Toro supposed to do anything else as far as his drug treatment?
No, we didn't ask him to. No, just random drug testing.
Okay. So let's talk about, well, I'll come back to that. Despite the fact that you didn't ask him to do anything, did he attend NA class?
Yes, he did.
Do you know how frequently he attended NA class?
He was going about every week and was providing me documentation of that.
And are those documentation part of your file?
Yes.
Is this Mr. Del Toro's sign-in sheet?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me that in fact he's been going not weekly, but 3 times a week?
Yes.
And he started attending back on October 10th of 2022?
Yes.
And he has consistently attended, and I'm scrolling through multiple pages, up until today, right? Basically. I think the last one I have is from February 22nd, which is a couple of days ago.
Yes, that is what I have also.
Judge, same objection. It's not a certified copy. There's no way to authenticate this document.
Your Honor, I would agree with Mr. Saldivar's objection that there's no way to authenticate it. And
Any response, Mr. Saul?
Your Honor, again, certified copy objection only exists for things that can be certified, such as court records or police reports. A person signing an A sheet cannot be certified. There is no way to get it done, so it's not a proper objection. And multiple parties have admitted Ms. Lewis as a custodian of records for the department, and she said, I think actually a couple times, that this is what she has seen, what she has a copy of in her file, and what's been provided.
Objections overruled. Respondent to Father's Exhibit 6, sign-in sheets is admitted.
Now, in addition to successfully completing drug treatment and attending NA, you've requested him to submit the random drug test, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that was from the moment he was released from incarceration up until today, correct?
Yes.
And what kind of drug test did you ask him to do? Type?
And that was hair and AUAs.
And approximately how many drug tests did you request Mr. Del Toro submit to?
Around probably about 10 UAs while I was the caseworker and 2 hair tests while I was the caseworker.
Was there a prior test requested of him by other workers before you?
Yes.
I do know how many.
There was a prior hair test that was court ordered at the October hearing that was done by another worker.
So altogether, there's been about 13 UAs and hair tests to the best
Yes.
of you. And did Mr. Del Toro submit to those 13 drug tests?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that the results of those drug tests did not cause you any concern?
Yes.
Yes, they didn't cause you any concern.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. They did not cause any concern.
Okay. And when did you start drug testing Mr. Del Toro?
Mid-October.
And the worker prior to that started doing hair follicle right after his release from incarceration, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when was his last drug test?
His last drug test was on the 22nd of February.
And so continually throughout this period of time, he's demonstrated his commitment to sobriety and to the fact that he's been staying drug-free, correct?
Yes.
I believe the next thing that was requested on his service plan was a psychological.
Yes.
And did he complete the psychological evaluation?
Yes, he did.
And there were no additional concerns or services that were requested of him after the completion of that psychological, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So sitting here today, Mr. Del Toro has done everything that the department has asked of him on his service plan.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in addition to completing everything that the department has asked of him, he's actually gone a little above and beyond and done some extra services. Would you agree?
Yes.
Specifically, he went out and completed a parenting class.
Parenting was on his family plan of service.
Okay. So that's just something you forgot to mention when you were going over the list.
So, yes, I apologize.
That's okay. Okay. So let's go backwards a little. Did he complete the parenting class?
He did on December 6th of 2022.
Okay. And did he provide you with a certificate showing he has completed it?
He did.
Is that the certificate? Is it Mr. Del Toro's certificate for completing parenting classes without Texas life skill?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would ask that Father's Exhibit 2 be admitted into evidence.
No objection.
No objection.
All right. Respondent Father's Exhibit 2, which is a certificate of completion of his parenting classes, admitted.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Del Toro also completed 2 separate anger management classes, correct?
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's correct.
3. Now, the first anger management was completed while he was incarcerated, correct?
Yes.
This is a certificate for the second anger management he completed after being released, correct?
Correct.
And you have certificates of all of those, of both anger management classes in your file, correct?
Yes, I do.
No objection.
No objection.
Respondent Father's Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Is that a certificate showing that Mr. Del Toro also completed an HIV education class?
Respondent Father's 4 is admitted.
Now, additionally, Mr. Del Toro went out and completed a domestic violence class. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he's provided you with a certificate of that.
Yes, yes.
And again, that was on his service plan, but he went ahead and did that anyway, correct?
That service, yes, that's correct.
Additionally, is Mr. Del Toro employed?
Yes.
And has he been employed ever since he was released from incarceration?
Yes.
So would you agree with me it's stable employment?
Yes, he does.
And so where does he work and what does he do, if you know?
He works with, I believe, his uncle, to my knowledge.
And have you been able to verify that employment?
I have not gotten any pay stubs. I know he, it's a 1099, I believe. So just, but I mean, I have seen him coming from work from visitations and such.
And what does he do there?
believe he is a construction worker, just a handyman.
Okay. And do you know if Mr. Del Toro has actually worked for this company prior to his incarceration?
I do not know that knowledge.
Okay. Do you know that he started working there immediately upon his release?
I do know that he did start working right after he was released.
Okay. And we're talking like a day or two after, so like immediately, correct?
Yes.
And he has continued to work there this entire time.
Correct.
When Mr. Del Toro was released, what home was he released to?
His mother's home in Natalia.
And has he continued to reside there from the date of his release until today?
Yes.
Is there a reason you haven't gone to visit that home at any time in the last 5 months?
No, that one is on me. Yeah.
But do you have any reason to suspect Grandma's home is inappropriate in any way?
Speculation, Judge. Objection.
Overruled. I don't hear her asking to speculate. I'm hearing her ask if there's any reason that she's aware of. She can testify to that.
No.
Did I understand your testimony earlier correctly that, excuse me, that part of the delay in the start of family therapy was the availability of the family therapist?
Yes, it was her scheduling too. It wasn't just Jessica and Emilio.
Did I understand your testimony correctly earlier that you are not seeking termination of these parents' rights? That you believe it's in this child's best interest for the child to remain with the aunt and for both parents to have continued access and visitation with this child?
Yes, that is what the department/belong is asking.
Okay. Now, Ms. Del Toro was given some limited visitation with the child, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so what was his visitation from the beginning until now?
He has 1 hour twice a month or every other week. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I did give him 2 hours the past 2 times to make up for the November visits that were missed.
So he's been visiting twice a month for 1 hour until last month when he's been visiting for 2 hours twice a month.
Yes, and that is with Jessica, those 2 hour visits.
And has he come to those visits and participated in them?
Yes, he has.
And has he been appropriate during those visits?
Yes, he has.
And does the baby seem happy to see her dad?
Yes, she does. She plays with him.
Is he appropriate in how he treats her and plays with her and does whatever a parent is supposed to do during the visit?
Yes, he does. And he also brings a diaper bag usually that has things for her.
Do you believe maintaining of parental rights in this case, so both of the parents could continue to be parents to this child, would be in the child's best interest?
I do.
Do you believe that Mr. Del Toro loves his daughter?
I do.
How long have you been the worker in this case?
I started
That was my question. I asked it wrong. How long have you been the worker, period?
I've been a worker for 2.5 years.
Okay. And you're aware that generally speaking, the court gives each parent about 12 months to do a service plan?
That's correct, yes.
And in some cases, it may be extended to an 18-month deadline, but that's definitely an exception to the rules.
Yes.
Okay. And in this case, Mr. Del Toro, because of his incarceration, had a total of 5 months to do his service plan.
Yes.
Would you agree with me that it's extremely unusual and shows an amazing level of commitment that he successfully finished his entire service plan and more in those 5 months?
Objection, Your Honor. Sidebar.
Sustain. Let's rephrase that.
Okay. Would you agree with me that it's unusual and shows commitment that Mr. Del Toro finished his service plan in only 5 months?
Yes.
No other questions?
Yes, Your Honor. As part of your record and taking over the case, do you have to review the CPS history?
Yes.
Okay. As far as Miss Shower is concerned, did she have prior CPS history with any other children that she had?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, what was that CPS history?
Beginning back in July of 2019, she has had 3 CPS cases, one including Serenity and 2 others with her other 3 children.
Okay, let's start with the very first one that you found. The very first one, when did that happen?
July 2019.
Okay, so in July 2019, what was your finding, the CPS history of Jessica Shower?
Due to drug use, there was an investigation that was open. However, it was ruled out.
Okay. Did it specify what drug Miss Shower was abusing at the time?
Dr. Honor, calls for speculation. It was ruled out.
Judge, as a part of her record, it's her CPS history, Judge.
And it was determined to not have happened by that rule out determination.
It's for pattern,
no,
Judge. It's a part of her history.
It's also a mischaracterization of what ruled out means. It doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Overruled.
Methamphetamines.
Yes, it was methamphetamines. Is that correct? Okay. Were there any other concerns at the time during that open CPS investigation?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Do you know why it was ruled out?
I do not know exactly why it was ruled out now.
Okay. And when was the second CPS investigation?
It was about right after that one was closed out. There was another one that was open that resulted in an FBSS case.
And what was the concerns at that time in that investigation?
Drug use also.
And what children were in her care at that time?
Her oldest one, and I believe her middle child.
Okay. And so was there issues or concerns about methamphetamine use at the time?
Yes.
Was there concerns about domestic violence during that second CPS case?
There was with that father of the child.
So Miss Shower's relationship at the time, there was concerns about methamphetamine use and domestic violence in 2019. Is that correct?
Correct.
She was given services in that case. What was the outcome of that case?
Miss Shower made the decision for her children to remain with her mother, the maternal grandmother.
Okay. To your knowledge, did Miss Shower ever stop abusing methamphetamine and address the domestic violence concerns in that case?
To my knowledge, it was closed out successfully. So yes.
Okay. So when was the third case?
The September 9th of 2021, Serenity, the case we're on.
Okay. And this case also involves issues of methamphetamine use by Miss Shower. Is that correct?
Yes.
So total Miss Shower's had 3 active cases with the department or belong regarding methamphetamine use around her children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you say that Miss Shower has a pattern of using methamphetamine around her children?
Yes.
Objection, no personal knowledge, and calls for speculation. And strike the witness talking over me.
Judge, she's the custodian of record. I mean, we laid this foundation at the beginning of this case. She reviews these, and so she has to have this knowledge to create a service plan, help the parents.
I've already heard other testimony to support the contention, so overrule.
Okay. And when this case was open, Mr. Del Toro was in jail for a conviction for domestic violence. Is that correct?
Correct.
So again, we have a third CPS case with Miss Shower involving drug use and domestic violence with a partner. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was that a concern to the department when creating the service plan?
Not the initial one. Considering what it does say on the family plan, there was no.
And would
address that.
Would that reason?
Sorry, there was no what? I'm sorry.
Sorry, there were no services to address the domestic violence.
Okay. Could Emilio Del Toro's incarceration at the time have caused that to be missing from the service plan?
It could have.
Okay. Now, as far as the visitation, you said Ms. Shower visited throughout this case. Were there any issues? Was she ever late to a visit or any concerns during her visitation?
Not during a visitation, but I do know there were a few times that she was running late. That was noted.
Now, this case has been open since September of 2021. Did Ms. Shower attend Serenity's medical appointments throughout this case?
Not until February.
February of what year?
2023.
So from September 2021 to February 2023, Ms. Shower failed to go to Serenity's medical appointments. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did Ms. Shower?
I believe that Ms. Shower has dropped off.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to clarify, we were on medical appointments, and you stated that from September 2021 till February 2023, Ms. Shower did not attend any appointments for the child. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And we did have a hearing on January 24th, 2023. Do you recall that hearing?
I do.
And that was multiple hearings on a motion for a return and monitor and a motion to go back to supervised visits. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was there also a permanency hearing held?
I believe so.
Yes. Now, if I showed you the permanency order, could you identify it?
Yes.
Judge, can I screen share, please?
Yes, you may. It should be available.
Let's see if I get this right. Okay, Judge, let me see. Can everybody see here? Trying to make this bigger. Okay. Can you see the order, Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Is this the order from the permanency hearing on January 24th, 2023?
Yes.
Okay. And all parties attended, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you read what the court found under number 3.1?
The court finds that there is a continuing danger to the physical health or safety of the child, and returning Serenity Del Toro to Jessica Shower is contrary to the welfare of the child.
Okay. And is that the same under 3.2 for Mr. Emilio Del Toro?
Yes.
Okay. And under number 5, visitation plan, the court ordered, can you read the section under 5.1 that's highlighted?
Yes, the mother in this case needs to engage in couples counseling with the father and continue with all her court-ordered services.
Okay. Now, can you read under a visitation plan for Emilio Del Toro, the highlighted part as well?
Father in this case needs to engage in couples counseling with the mother to continue with his court-ordered services.
Judge, I'd like to enter this order as Intervenors Exhibit 1. That was after we had a full hearing in front of the judge and evidence was presented, and that was the ruling. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did the department ask for couples counseling after Mr. Del Toro was released?
Yes.
And why was it important that the department modify the service plan to include couples counseling?
To ensure that they can have a healthy relationship together and have boundaries that are healthy.
Okay. Was it also that Mr. Del Toro and Ms. Shower both had domestic violence histories?
Yes.
And was it also because the Ms. Shower and Mr. Del Toro both have history of abusing methamphetamines?
Yes.
What was the goal of couples counseling?
To address those healthy boundaries and healthy relationships between them, and learn how to co-parent in a healthy way for Serenity.
Did Mr. Del Toro at a prior hearing testify that he was asking parole to move in with Jessica Shower after his release from incarceration?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, was the only reason that was denied was because parole did not allow it?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Now, do you believe that couples counseling was necessary to determine whether it was safe for the child to return home to Jessica Shower and Mr. Del Toro?
I believe it was necessary, yes.
And within your interactions between Miss Shower and Mr. Del Toro, is it your understanding that they continue in a relationship and their goal is to one day live together?
Yes.
Okay. And at this time, the department and Belong is treating them as a couple and a unit regarding services. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, this order dated January 24th, ordered couples counseling. Has that been completed here today? Yes or no?
No.
So have the parents completed their court-ordered service plan? Yes or no?
No.
Ms. Shower entered inpatient at what time? What was the date on that?
The end of April. I don't have it.
And that was April 2022?
Correct. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. And after that, she relapsed after that completion of inpatient. Is that correct?
Yes, in September of 2022.
Can you explain to the court how she relapsed?
She had came back to the area for, I believe, a visit or a birthday party of Serenity's. And she was just in the area for the weekend. And to my knowledge, she had relapsed on alcohol. She went back to the sober living home and was honest with her outpatient counselor about it.
Okay. And then after that, she completed an outpatient program and relapsed again. Is that correct?
She completed that. She was in the outpatient program when the relapse happened.
Okay. So can you explain how she relapsed during the outpatient program?
It was the alcohol use was the relapse.
Okay. And as the custodian of record, to your knowledge, how long has Ms. Shower had problems with drugs or alcohol?
To my knowledge, since 2019, when the first case, CPS case, was called.
Okay. And to date, she has no children in her custody or care. Is that correct?
Correct.
Has Serenity ever lived with Ms. Shower?
No.
Has Ms. Shower had any overnight visitation during this case?
No.
Do you believe that Ms. Shower knows how to properly care for the child medically?
Not at this time. She hasn't been able to go to speech appointments, etc.
And why has the department not been able to increase the visitation to overnight or return the child to Ms. Shower and Amelia Del Toro?
At this time, I haven't staffed for a monitor return. We have concerns for their relationship together and codependency between each other.
Okay.
And downplaying drug use.
Now, at the prior hearing in January, did you hear Mr. Del Toro's testimony in court?
Yes.
Did you hear how he described his conviction for domestic violence?
Yes.
Did you have concerns how he testified at that hearing?
Yes.
What were your concerns?
The department's main concern was, the downplay of methamphetamine use, that he can just use it and then stop whenever. That was a main concern.
Okay, that was one concern. But as far as the domestic violence, what was the concern when he testified as to his conviction?
That it was downplayed also, that it was just a little fight between him and his dad and it got dropped.
Okay, were those concerns the downplaying of methamphetamine use and the downplay of domestic violence that he was convicted for, was that ever addressed with the counselor?
He has been addressing the domestic violence with his dad, with the counselor, yes.
Was the counselor aware that he testified in open court and downplayed his part and his role in that conviction?
I do not believe so, no.
He started individual counseling in January 2023, is that correct?
Correct.
And has he completed individual counseling?
No, he's still engaged.
Okay, so he has not completed individual counseling as of this date, correct?
Correct.
Now, there was testimony that he completed individual counseling in jail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was that individual counseling related to the CPS case or his criminal case?
That was related to his criminal case. Those were the services that he was able to do in jail.
So that individual counseling was not addressing the reasons why Serenity was brought into care. Is that correct?
I do not know exactly what they were addressing, so yes.
Okay. And he completed parenting when?
December 6th of 2022.
Have you seen Mr. Del Toro utilize the things that he's learned in parenting during his meetings with Serenity?
I've seen him, be able to calm her down, kind of redirect her in situations. But that's all I've been able to see so far.
Okay. So since September, how many visits, September 2021, how many visits has Mr. Del Toro had with Serenity?
6.
Okay. So, and that would, to your knowledge, he's had 6 total visits with his child since she was born. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that Serenity has a bond to Mr. Del Toro?
I believe it's in the works. I don't believe there's a complete one yet.
So, but at the time of this trial, do you believe that Mr. Del Toro has a bond to Serenity?
No.
Okay. When did Mr. Del Toro complete domestic violence?
February 23rd of 2023.
So Mr. Del Toro finished it about 5 days ago?
Yes.
Does that give the department enough time, 5 days, to assess whether he's adequately learned from the domestic violence course and apply that in his relationship with Jessica Shower?
I have not been able to assess that yet. No.
So at this time, the department doesn't know whether that domestic violence course will work or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, couples counseling, was that available at the jail for Mr. Del Toro to engage in with Ms. Shower?
I don't believe during the jail time, no.
Okay. Now, you said at some point, Ms. Shower notified the department that she was not in a relationship with Mr. Del Toro. Is that correct?
Correct.
And does that cause concern that she was in a relationship, not in a relationship, and then now she's back in a relationship with Mr. Del Toro?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how does the department handle when parents start off services by themselves and then end up getting in a relationship?
We reassess the family plan and usually put their services together, as in couples counseling, adding that if needed. Yeah. And
is that for the benefit of the child?
Yes.
And how does that benefit the child?
Well, to hopefully allow her parents to have those healthy relationship with each other so they can have a healthy relationship with their daughter.
Okay. And have you had enough time to adequately view the relationship between the parents to determine whether that's a healthy and stable relationship?
I have been able to see them together, and I have not had any concerns of them together. However, I haven't had adequate time to do that. It's only been once or twice.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge of whether parole is still prohibiting Mr. Del Toro to live with Jessica Shower at this time?
I do not have any knowledge since January of that. No.
Okay. And how long is Mr. Del Toro going to be on parole?
That is I'm not sure. Not to my knowledge.
And since September of 2021, how many medical appointments has Mr. Del Toro attended for Serenity?
1.
Okay. And would you agree with me that there's been several medical appointments for Serenity in this case?
Yes.
Do you believe that Mr. Del Toro can adequately care and provide medical support to Serenity at this time?
No.
Again, the parents have been given an extension in this case, almost 1.5 years to complete their services. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the parents have failed to complete the court-ordered services in this case. Is that correct?
Objection asked and answered repeatedly.
Now, as far as Ms. Shower's drug testing, while she was at inpatient or outpatient, did she ever have any diluted samples?
Objection asked and
Judge, I haven't asked that question.
But two other lawyers have, and it's been asked and answered.
Judge, I don't think anybody's asked about diluted samples during inpatient or outpatient.
Well, not during inpatient or outpatient, but there was discussion earlier about the diluted sample. I'll let you explore it a little bit, just not too much.
Okay. Were there any diluted samples at inpatient or outpatient while she was being monitored?
Not to my knowledge, not that I have seen.
While she was being monitored at inpatient or outpatient, did she miss any tests?
I was not told of any missed tests.
We did have a diluted and missed test after she left inpatient and outpatient. Is that correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Judge. Thank you.
Ms. Acosta.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Lewis, with regard to Ms. Shower, her initial OSAR, you testified that her initial OSAR didn't have recommendations, even though she had been using during pregnancy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are there any concerns that Ms. Shower wasn't honest in her initial OSAR assessment?
None that were brought up. I believe it was because she was already engaged in the 12-step program is why they had made those no recommendations on the assessment.
Okay, but she was later referred to inpatient, correct?
Yes, on her second one, she was.
Okay. With regard to the drug tests that were missed, is it concerning to the department that Mr. Del Toro missed a drug test and later asked to take it the following week?
It was concerning, yes.
Okay. And with regard to Ms. Shower, was it concerning that she failed to go for a drug test when requested?
Yes.
When she did finally go for another drug test, was it after 3 days had passed?
Yes.
Is that concerning to the department?
Yes.
Especially considering it's so close to, it was within the last few weeks, correct?
Yes.
Within the past couple of months, have you noticed any changes to Ms. Shower's hair?
I have not. I have not.
To your knowledge, has Ms. Shower made any efforts to learn what is involved in caring for Serenity?
This past month she has, but not before this past month.
Okay. And how many therapies does Serenity have?
She has like speech therapy twice a month at the daycare.
Okay. Is she involved in any other kind of therapies, occupational therapy or physical therapy?
I don't believe so. I believe it's just that one therapy twice a month.
Occupational therapy and what therapy?
Physical therapy.
Thank you.
To your knowledge, was she seeing a developmental specialist?
Yes, she was.
Okay. And does she continue to see that specialist?
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, prior to this past month, has Ms. Shower ever gone to any of the appointments for that developmental specialist?
Not to my knowledge.
Has she requested any information from you regarding Serenity's care or about that developmental specialist and what she needs?
No.
Okay. Same questions for Mr. Del Toro. To your knowledge, what efforts has he made to be involved in or to learn what's involved in caring for Serenity on a daily basis?
He has only been to a dentist appointment.
Okay. And to your knowledge, does he have the ability to provide for Serenity and all of the things that she needs?
I don't believe he has the knowledge fully of what Serenity, her day-to-day needs are. No.
There was a question asked about Mr. Del Toro and where he's living. Who is he living with?
His mother.
And what is his mother's name?
Making that, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. To your knowledge, was she evaluated or looked into for placement of Serenity at the very beginning of this case at removal?
Yes.
And was she found not to be appropriate for placement?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know why she wasn't appropriate for placement?
It came out that Mr. Del Toro's father was in and out of that home at the time, and he did admit to the worker who called him that he had smoked marijuana in.
Objection, hearsay.
Overrule.
Smoked marijuana.
No, this is a non-party.
Who are you quoting?
She's quoting grandmother's husband or ex-husband.
Your Honor, this is part of the investigation and into the for whether or not this child was removed in the first place. All of this goes back to her being the custodian of the record.
And Your Honor, it
Okay,
also
first
goes.
of all, she's not the investigator. Second of all, she has no personal knowledge of this of any kind.
Miss Lewis, did you get this information? How did you come upon this information?
The investigation report that I read.
Is that in the file?
Yes.
All right. You have any reason to believe that that's inaccurate or untrue?
No.
All right. Then under 8036, it's not hearsay. Go ahead. Overrule.
There were concerns of methamphetamine and marijuana use from time to time.
Okay. To your knowledge, did Ms. Shower ever go to that home?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Del Toro lives there, correct?
At this time, yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, does Ms. Shower ever go visit Mr. Del Toro in that home currently?
Not to my knowledge, I'm not sure. I think Mr. Del Toro goes to her more.
Okay. Do you think, given your experience with Serenity and this case, do you believe that it would be traumatic for Serenity to be removed from the home where she is currently living?
I do.
And isn't it true that she is very bonded and well taken care of by her current caregivers?
Yes.
Do you believe it's in her best interest to stay there?
Yes.
And at this point in time, has either parent demonstrated that they can provide a safe or stable home for Serenity and meet all of her needs?
Not fully, no.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
You stated previously that Mr. Del Toro and Ms. Shower used meth together when they were together prior to the birth of Serenity. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
Would you consider that a concern for? Would you consider that in the camp of domestic violence in a relationship, doing meth together while pregnant?
Objection, leading and calls for speculation.
Sustained. Let's rephrase.
What concerns do you have about the drug use that both parents have admitted to using while Ms. Shower was pregnant with Serenity?
Objection, Your Honor, compound question and leads to speculation and asked and
One
answered.
question. What concerns does Ms. Lewis have about the parents' drug use together while Ms. Shower was pregnant?
Oh, yeah, I'll overrule a compound question, and I don't believe it's speculative. You may ask the question, or answer the question. Overrule.
It's concerning that they knew that they had a child on their way and they were choosing to use drugs while Ms. Shower was pregnant with their daughter.
You testified about Mr. Del Toro's work schedule. Has he, and that he essentially, it's your understanding that he is working. Has he paid any child support?
I don't believe so.
And to your knowledge, was that ordered by the court?
I believe there is child support ordered.
And what about Ms. Shower? Has she provided any child support?
Not to my knowledge.
And you testified when you were being questioned by Ms. Pearsall about the fact that Mr. Del Toro has completed a parenting class. Has he actually been able to parent Serenity?
No.
Okay. Who ran out of time in this case? Was it the department or was it somebody else who ran out of time in getting a solid foundation for what's in Serenity's best interest?
I believe somebody else ran out of time.
Who?
Ms. Shower.
And who else?
Mr. Del Toro.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to introduce the petitioner's exhibits through Ms. Lewis. They've been previously provided to the parties, and I believe they're all certified copies, and it's my understanding that there's no objections.
Your Honor, I would object. It's completely outside the scope. She finished her direct, so I think it's way too late to introduce any exhibits now.
Your Honor, every party has questioned Ms. Lewis, and so therefore it's still within the scope, has questioned Ms. Lewis about the progress of this case, other hearings, introductions of their own orders by this court.
That
it's in the court's file as well.
I'm sorry.
I'd make the objection, Judge. It's in the court's file already. So I'd ask to take judicial notice of the court's file. These are orders that were previously entered into the court.
Your Honor, I don't agree with that. I think that depends on the exhibit. But my initial objection goes to the fact that she should have done it during her initial questioning of her witness. At this point, it's too late. You can't on cross decide to admit exhibits.
Not on cross, Your Honor. I'm on redirect.
I believe that what I heard on cross and everything that was introduced on cross keeps the door open enough for her to introduce her exhibits. So I'll overrule that. Is that the only objection?
No, Your Honor. Well, I guess it depends on what she's trying to admit. There's a lot of exhibits and none of them are numbered.
Ms. Kyler Green, why don't you slowly, so that Ms. Greenwald hears everything and I hear everything, more for my sake than hers, list what you have to introduce.
Yes, Your Honor. I'll start with petitioner's exhibit 1 is the waiver of service for Ms. Shower.
Okay.
Number 2 is the citation return for Emilio Del Toro.
Ms. Kyler Green, do you have numbered exhibits somewhere? Because the ones you sent to us were not numbered.
They were not numbered at that point. I do now. I can show you the file that has them all listed out if that's easier for everyone to have a visual.
Can you resend them to us numbered just to make it a little easier to go through?
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I can take a minute to do that.
That's fine. Let's just go ahead and get them listed on the record, and then I can make rulings on any objections.
The petitioner's exhibit 3 is the temporary orders. Petitioner's exhibit 4 is the status hearing order. 6 is the initial perm order.
You skipped 5.
Apologies. 5 is family service plan.
For the mother or the father?
I think for both.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I would object to any and all hearsay in, I guess, what's 5?
Let me get the exhibits listed and then we'll talk about objections. All right, what's 6?
6 is the initial permanency hearing order.
Okay.
7 is the permanency before final from May 10, 2022. 8 is permanency before final order from July 12th, 2022. 9 is the permanency before final order October 11th, 2022. Number 10 is the permanency before final January 24th, 2022. Whoa, 23, apologies. 11 is the documentation of the Court of Continuing Exclusive Jurisdiction. 12 is the certificate of paternity registry. 13 is the adjudication of parentage of Emilio Del Toro. And 14 is the mediated settlement agreement from July 6, 2022. 15 is the order to retain, but I believe that's been admitted now by, I think, the mother.
You're right. They're all certified copies?
Except for 16 and 17, Your Honor. And there's also 18 through 25 are certified copies of Emilio Del Toro's criminal record.
All right, before I get into Ms. Pearsall's objections, does anybody else have any other objections?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Pearsall, what are your specific objections?
Okay, Judge, the way, honestly, she's trying to introduce them, I don't even know where to start. So what I'm guessing, I think is number 5, which is the family plan, has a ton of hearsay, which is inadmissible. So all the hearsay needs to be stricken before that's admitted, and it's.
All right, well, I do agree. I do agree that if there's inadmissible hearsay in the family plan of service, exhibit number 5, not anything that it would be admissible pursuant to the rulings the court has already made, but anything in there that's inadmissible hearsay, then that's to be disregarded or stricken from that exhibit. Otherwise, I'll admit it. But what other objections do you have?
Your Honor, I object to any of the plea agreements regarding Mr. Del Toro's criminal convictions. Those aren't admissible under 410 of the Rules of Evidence in civil cases.
And I do have a question about that, Ms. Kyler Green. What exactly is within? Let's back up a step. It's 1249. This is what I want to do. Before I make a ruling on any of these exhibits that have just been set forth, I want Ms. Kyler Green, I need you to submit those to the parties with numbers, and everybody needs to take a look at them and be ready to voice any specific objections you have before we begin or when we begin next Wednesday morning. Let's stipulate to what we can stipulate to, and we'll take up any objections at that time. I don't want that to take any longer than 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so please be ready. Any other housekeeping issues we need to take up? And I need to make sure, let me bring Ms. Potts and Ms. Crouch in here.
Oh, Your Honor, I would ask that you order all the subpoenas be continued and everybody who's been subpoenaed be ordered to appear next time.
That's fine. Okay, Ms. Potts and Ms. Crouch, I'm going to bring you up to speed. We are not done yet, and the court only had 4 hours today, so we're going to resume. I'm going to recess the trial, and we're going to resume it next Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. And is there any objection to the court hearing the remainder of the trial by Zoom?
No, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor. No objection.
Okay, then it's on the record that you all will appear by Zoom. I will be again here at the Medina County Courthouse. I also will hold over any subpoenas to 8:30 a.m. Wednesday, March the 8th. And anybody who is subject to the rule remains subject to the rule. Please do not discuss this case with other witnesses or parties, and make sure that you adhere to all the requirements of that. Okay. Well, thank you all for your time and your service. I'll see you at 8:30 next Wednesday, March the 8th. Nothing further. All parties are excused.